Hello, hello. If you don't know me, my name is Kylan. This is a redo of the last one that I made because the audio messed up. I already know that, so I apologize about that. But um, yeah, this has been something that's on my mind a lot. Um, and yeah, something I've been kind of pondering about, and I feel like that through, like I said, speaking through these videos is kind of a way of not only helping myself, but hopefully helping somebody else who may be going through the same situation. um, but today's video is called "Stop Expecting and Start Accepting." Lately I've been thinking about something that's honestly changed the way I looked at a lot of things. Um, it's still something I'm learning, and so I'm not, like I said, I'm not making this video because I mastered it. I make these videos because there's still concepts that I struggle to grasp myself. I continue to practice what I preach. But yeah, like I said, I'm making it because a lot of us are trying to figure a lot of the same things out. Um, but at first, the phrasing might sound negative. It might sound like I'm saying, don't have dreams, don't hope for anything, or just don't believe things can get better. But it's not what I'm saying at all. You should have dreams, you should work hard, you should believe that good things are possible. But I think there's a difference between hope and expectation. Hope says, this will be amazing if it happened. While expectation says, this has to happen or I won't be okay. And right there is where, we tend to get hurt. Think about how many expectations we carry every single day. We expect people to stay, we expect our plans to work out, we expect our hard work to immediately pay off. We expect life to make sense. Then one day, someone changes, a door closes, an opportunity disappears, a friendship fades, you don't make the team you wanted, you don't get the job, you don't get the answer you were hoping for. And suddenly it feels like your whole world is falling apart. But was it really the situation that broke us, or was it the expectation that we attached to it? I realized that, sometimes we're not mourning reality. We're mourning the future we created in our own minds. And I think that's one of the hardest things to let go of. I feel life has a funny way of reminding us that, we're not always in control. You can do everything right, you can work hard, be kind, stay loyal, give your best, and things still may not go your way. That doesn't necessarily mean you failed, it doesn't mean life is against you, it just means life isn't always as predictable as we may think it is. I think that's one of the hardest lessons to accept because, we like certainty. We like knowing what's next. We like having plans, but life doesn't always ask for permission before changing everything. One thing I've learned is that expectations aren't just, about people, they're about everything. Sometimes we expect college to go a certain way. We expect our senior year to be the best year of our lives. We expect to have everything figured out by a certain age. We expect success to happen quickly. We expect our prayers to be answered exactly how we imagine. But what happens when none of those things happen? Do we quit? Do we become bitter? Or do we learn to accept that life might have a different path than the one we planned? Because maybe the path we didn't choose is the one that's actually making us into the person we're supposed to become. Excuse me, I'm reading off I got, notes when I have these videos, but one thing that, I can't really, I would say, apply this to in my life. As you may know, or if you don't know, I play football for my high school. I think the one thing football has taught me is that, You can prepare for months, watch film, lift weights, practice every day, do everything your coaches ask, and you can still lose the game. But, does that mean all that hard work you put in was pointless? No. Because, football isn't just about winning. It's about discipline, character, resilience, learning how to respond when things don't go your way. And in a lot of aspects, life works the same way. Sometimes you put in the work, but the results just aren't showing up yet. That doesn't mean you stop. It means you keep becoming the type of person who'll be ready when your opportunity finally comes. I think one of the biggest reasons people struggle with peace is because they're trying to control things that were never really theirs to control. We want to control outcomes, timing. We want to control what other people think. We want to control who stays in our lives. But the truth is, you can't. The only thing you truly control is how you respond. You control your attitude, your effort, your character, choices. Everything else, that's not really yours. And I feel once I started realizing that, life became sort of lighter in a way. It's almost a burden that was kind of lifted off my shoulders, because I think, so many of us have this vision for ourselves, which isn't always really a bad thing, but we kind of get our hopes up a lot really too soon. And I think once things don't go our way, we start blaming everything else. Instead of looking within, we turn the internal battle to a external, but it's really something, like I said, that comes from within. And acceptance isn't necessarily weakness. Acceptance doesn't mean you're giving up. It doesn't mean you stop caring. Acceptance simply means you're no longer fighting reality. You're no longer wasting energy wishing today looked like yesterday. You're choosing to move forward instead of staying stuck. It's called strength. One of my favorite verses is Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Notice it doesn't say we'll understand everything. It actually tells us not to rely on our own understanding. Why? Because there's going to be moments that don't make sense. Moments where we ask why, and we won't get an answer. Faith isn't about having every answer. Sometimes faith is choosing to trust even when you don't understand. I think social media has made expectations a lot worse. We expect our lives to look like everyone else's highlight reel. We expect, everything to have everything figured out because, someone our age sort of already seems like they, made it in a way. We compare our behind the scenes to someone else's best moments, but comparison steals contentment. You never know what someone had to sacrifice to get to where they are. You never know what battles they're hiding. Stop comparing your timeline to someone else's, because your story isn't supposed to look like theirs. Another thing I've been learning is that not every closed door is a punishment. Sometimes it's protection, preparation, or just simple redirection. There have been moments in my life where, I thought losing something was the worst thing that could happen. But looking back, I'm sort of thankful for, the experience, because if it hadn't, I wouldn't be able to learn and grow and, sit down and talk in front of a screen like this today and, be so vulnerable to, my emotions. Because, perspective really changes everything. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Not just the good moments, all things. The disappointment, the confusion, the waiting, the unanswered prayers. Even those moments can become part of something bigger than we understand. So what does stop expecting and start accepting actually mean? It means stop expecting life to always be fair. Start accepting that growth often comes through difficulty. Stop expecting people to always understand you. Start accepting that not everyone is supposed to walk every season with you. Stop expecting success overnight and start accepting the process. Stop expecting every prayer to be answered exactly the way you imagine. And start accepting that God's timing isn't always your time. Stop expecting everything to make sense immediately. And start accepting that clarity often comes later. You know, if you're watching this and you're in a season where life feels confusing, maybe something didn't work out, someone left, you're disappointed, or you're questioning your future, I want you to hear this. Your life isn't over because one chapter, didn't go the way you planned. Some of the best stories begin after everything falls apart. Sometimes what feels like the end is really just the beginning. And here's the question I've started asking myself. Instead of asking, why did this happen? I try asking, what is this teaching me? That one question changes everything, because every season has something to teach. Every setback builds something inside of you. Every obstacle develops character. Every disappointment gives you wisdom. And character lasts a lot longer than comfort. So there's one thing I want you to take, away from this video, is that life will never completely match your expectations. People will surprise you, plans change, doors will close, dreams will evolve. But that doesn't mean your life is falling apart. Sometimes that means it's finally falling into place. Peace doesn't come from controlling everything. Peace comes from accepting what you can't control while giving your best to what you can. So keep dreaming, keep working, keep praying. On good and bad days, keep believing. Just don't let your expectations become so heavy that they keep you from appreciating the life that's right in front of you. Because one day you'll look back and realize the moments you wanted to skip were the moments that shaped you the most. Once again, thank you all for watching. Hopefully we can all get through whatever battles we don't talk about. And yeah, this is an open space to, share what you think, what you're going through. And yeah, if you need any other concepts that, you think needs to be spoken on, I might record another video today. This might be a double, because I wanted to record one yesterday, but like I said, this one, it got messed up. Hopefully this one doesn't, but yeah, I appreciate you, and yeah, see y'all next time.